now that we've created this player class and we have this create deck function, which creates a custom shuffle deck for us, we're going to use this and we're actually going to start creating and playing our game. So I've kind of taken out all the testing that we've done before, and I've just left with the essentials. So we have our player class here that we've kind of spent a long time creating, and our create deck function that shuffles the deck. So let's just also take out this comment to just have everything relevant. Okay, and let's try to create a working game. So first off, let's just take our card deck and let's make it. So our card deck is going to be equal to, and then we call this create deck function that we've created. So that's going to give us our randomly shuffled card deck. So if we print out our card deck just one more time, just to make sure, and we run our code, we see here we have this nicely randomly shuffled card deck. If we run it again, we get a different shuffled card deck. So this is the create deck function that we're using that gives us back this randomly shuffled deck, and we're going to save that in the card deck. Now, one more thing that I'm going to show you that's very cool, and that's going to help us make this a lot easier, is going to be a way to simulate drawing cards. So what we're going to do is, first let's just print out the card deck and like this, and what we're going to do, and we'll print it out again after we're done, in between we're going to use a new function on the list, or we're going to use a method that's inherent to the list that's going to give us a card. So what we're going to do is, and we're going to print out the result, we're going to go into card deck, and what we're going to call is something called a pop function. Now what that does, and you'll see that in a second too, is it's going to take away this last number here. So actually let's just run it and then we can see it in action. So what it does is it takes the last number here and it pops it, in essence, that it takes this last number, it puts it out, and we see it actually reduces the size of the list by 1. So what it does is it accesses this last number, it takes it out, and it reduces the size of the list by 1. So in essence, this is kind of like drawing a card. So if we can also pop again, for example, so we can go into card deck, and here we can go pop, and then it's a method, so we have to put the parentheses behind to call it. And we see here we have ace and 6 as the last two cards. First we kind of pop out the ace, then we pop out the 6, and now we're left with the king here. So you can see the order is not changing, it's just we're kind of taking out the last element by element. So every time we pop, we take out the last element. So we're going to use this to create, to kind of resemble giving out cards. So what we're going to do is let's just create two little lists first. So this is going to be our first hand. And what the first hand is just going to be, it's just going to be the first, or so we'll assume this is the top of the deck. So it's going to be the top two cards of the deck. So we're going to card.deck.pop. So this is going to be our first element, which is the top of the deck. In this case, it would have been the ace. And the second element is just going to be the number or the face value after that. So we're going to card deck.pop again. So what our first hand is just the top two cards of the deck. So we've taken away this card here and this card. And our second hand is going to be, and we're going to do the same thing here, card deck.pop. So this is going to be the third card. So we've popped the list here, which got rid of the ace. We popped it again, which got rid of the 6. Now we're popping it again, so that gives us the king. And one more time, card deck.pop, like this, and that gives us the queen. So our first hand is an ace and a 6, and our second hand is a king and a queen, directly in that order. And we can use this to create two types of player classes. So we're going to create a player 1, and we're going to create a house. So our player 1 is going to be equal to player, and let's just say our player 1 gets cards first. So our player 1 is going to be equal to player, and their hand is the first hand. So that's what we put in here as the initializer. Our hand is the first hand. We don't put in any money and since it has a default value, it's fine. We can just leave it like that. And our house is going to also be a player class, and their hand is going to be the second hand. And then maybe let's just print out player 1, and let's print out the house, and maybe in the very beginning we can also print out our card deck just to make sure everything worked correctly. And so let's run this code. And so we see here we have the 10 and the 2, and that's in the player 1 because they have the first hand, so that's the first 2 cards, which gives us a score of 12, so that works nice. And then the house has the 6 and the king, so the 3rd and the 4th card, which we see here in order, and their score is 16, so that also works nicely. Perfect, cool. Okay, so now we kind of know how to create hands and how to at least initiate the game. So now we actually need to start playing. So what do we do? Let's just take out all these print statements first. And now we're going to ask for user input. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an action variable. And this action variable is going to be represent user input. And we're just going to kind of continue to ask the user for input if they want to take a card or not. So if they want to hit another card or if they don't want to hit another card. And we're going to just kind of print their current standing out to them every time too. So we're going to print their hand to them first, and then we're going to ask them, do you want to take a card or not? And then if they take a card, we'll print out their hand to them again. So kind of like that. So the action is going to be, and now we're going to ask input. And we're just going to prompt the user kind of, do you want another card? Like this, and then maybe we just put in brackets behind here, yes slash, where do we go here? Yes slash no. So we're going to ask for either a Y or an N to resemble a yes or a no, because that's what we're going to be checking for. And then we have a colon here and a space just for some formatting. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check if our action is equal to yes. So what we're asking the user to do is we're asking them for input, do you want another card? Yes or no. If they do, so we're only going to check for Y or N, that's going to be the yes or no. If they do, we're going to give them another card. So what we're going to do is if they put in a Y, like this, so we get this all out in a string, so we don't need to really check for much. We can just check if the value they put in was a Y. If it was, then what we're going to do is we're going to go player 1, and they're going to hit. And what are they going to hit? Well, they're going to hit, or they're going to take the next card in the card deck. So they're going to take the top card, so they're going to go into card deck dot pop. So this is just going to give them the top card, and we don't need to save this in a variable. This is just kind of, as we see here, it just kind of gives you the output directly. So we don't need to save this in a variable or anything. We can just directly put it in here as input. So what would happen here, for example, if we popped an A, then the A would get put in directly here as a string, and then it would get put in here as the card, and into the hand we would append this card, and then our score would be set accordingly and such. So yeah, that's kind of what's going to happen here. We don't need to save this in a variable or anything. We can just kind of directly put it in. And then let's just print the hand, or let's just print player 1 to the player again. So let's run this and let's see what we get. Do we want to hit another card? Yes, we do. And so this is, oh, well, we didn't print the hand before, so we should probably tell them what they have before we ask if they want another card. And just for fun, let's also just print out our house before and after, just to kind of see. So we can also print out our house afterwards here, regardless of if they want another card or not. And just to also follow along, let's also print out the card deck, just so that we can kind of see where all the cards are going and stuff. So this is going to be the card deck after the top 4 cards have been removed already, because that's what we're doing up here. So this is going to be the remaining cards. So let's run this. So we see this is kind of the remaining card deck. The house currently has a king and an 8, although we wouldn't usually be able to see this, so we'll also need to take care of that. And the player has a 4 and a jack. And so we're asking, do you want another card? Let's just say yes. And now we see, well, we have a 4, a jack, and a 4. That's our player, and our house has a king and an 8, and they both have a score of 18. Well, maybe we would have wanted another card. So we kind of have to take care of that. Maybe what we can do is we can put in a loop. So we just kind of loop and loop until the player says, no, we don't want another card. So what are we going to do? Well, one of the ways that we can do it is we can use a while loop. And let's just make it infinite again. So we're going to loop and loop until the player says no. So we're going to have an infinite loop here. And so we use this while true. So if you don't remember what the while true means, it's while and then it checks in here while true is equal to true. And since true is always equal to true, it's just going to loop infinitely until we cancel it. So what we're doing here is we're checking if, so the action is the user input, if it's equal to y, so yes, then the player gets another card and we print what they have. Else, so if it's not equal to y, we're just going to break out of the loop. So we're going to assume that if they don't put in y, they don't want another card, and that's it. So we break out of the loop then. So yeah, we can do that. Maybe let's also just print the house in comparison, just so that we kind of know. And then we don't have to print it out here again, just so that we also know where the house is at. So that we can kind of continuously check and we don't have to scroll up or anything. So we see this is our remaining deck of 48 cards now because we took away the top 4 and we distributed to the player and so the house here and the player. And now we asked, do we want another card? Well, sure. And now we see that our player has 25, so that's not really good for us. That is over 21, so damn. But yeah, the house is 19. Now we still have the option of getting even more cards, so we need to take care of this too. So you see we can get even more cards now, and if we put in anything else, so like if we put in the n, it breaks out. So yeah, so this is the first kind of test. So maybe what we can do is instead of having this be an infinite loop, we can say while the player 1's score is less than 21. So if they have 21, we're not going to let them do a mistake and have them take another card. So we're just going to check while the player 1's score is less than 21. We're going to continuously give them the option to draw more cards. And the way that we get out of this loop is either the player goes over 21 or they don't want any other cards. So let's see that in action. So right now, so we print the house first. So that's what we see. The house has a jack and a 10. We have a jack and a queen. Let's just take another card just to kind of see our example. So we take another card. We see we get 24. We don't have the option of taking another card again. So that seems to be working nicely. Let's just run that again because that was, well, the house got a blackjack, so not much we can do here. We can take a jack though, and we see here now we've drawn an ace, and it also shows us. So the ace is counted as a 1 now because giving it an 11 would have made us go over. Let's take another card. Now we're at 22. Great. So we've lost again. We're not really doing well, even though we can see the house's cards, but oh well, that's the way it is. Yeah, but it seems to be working. Cool. So we've taken care of this now. Maybe what we want to do is we want to create a little function that lets us print the house, but it kind of hides the first card. Now, of course, we could have made a completely different class from the house, so obviously the house wouldn't need a bet it wouldn't need a win really, and we could create a kind of different subclass, or we could have made the house first and then made the player be a subclass of the house and given it this bet and this win function, or this bet and this win method. We could have done that. We didn't. We wanted to keep it simple. So what we're going to do real quick is we're just going to create a little function, and that's going to print the house and the score, but it's going to hide the first card. So what we're going to do is we're going to define a function called print house. Inside we're going to put the house, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to access the house's attributes directly. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop through it. So for card in, and we actually want to access the cards, the house's cards index by index now. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to hide the first number, and we're going to kind of print everything else out. So for card in house.hand, so we're going to access the hand of the house. So this is this hand variable that we're accessing, but we want to access the length of this, since we want to get indices and we want to do range. So what we're doing is our card is going to take on, and then we want the colon here, our card is going to take on the values 0 going up to, but not including the length of that hand. So if we have 2 cards in our hand, for example, our card's going to take on the values 0 and 1. And so if we have 5 cards, the card's going to take on the values 0 through 4, for example. And so we can use that to nicely access the individual cards in the house's hand index by index. So what we're going to do is, if our card is equal to 0, so if it's the first card, what we're going to do is we're going to print, and what we're going to print is just an X so that we can't see anything. And what we're also going to do is we're going to change our end separator. So our end is going to be equal, and we'll just put a space here. So if you remember, this is the formatting. So instead of printing a new line, we want to kind of continue printing on the same line. And since we're always going to have at least 2 cards, we're just going to kind of continue printing these spaces afterwards. Then the next thing that we're going to check is if we're going to check if our card is the final value in this range. And that's just for formatting. So what we're going to do, we're going to check if card is equal to, now we want the length of the house's hand. So that's what we're looking at. But since the range goes up to but not including, we actually want to see if the card is equal to the length of the house's hand minus 1. So if, for example, the house's hand is 5, house.hand is 5. So if the house has 5 cards, like this, what we want to show, or our range is gonna, that was a little bit too far back, our range is gonna give us the values 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So our last value is actually gonna be the length of the house hand minus 1. So if our card has that value, all we're gonna do is we're just gonna print, we're gonna print the house's hand, and we're going to print the corresponding card corresponding to this index. So we're just going to print the last card, but we're not going to add this extra end here so that we get a new line afterwards. So this should be an elif. So either we have the first card or we have the last card, and if we don't have the first or the last, else what we're going to do is we're just going to print the house's hand, and we're going to print the card corresponding to the index of card. So our card is taking on the values for example, for 5 cards, our cards taking on the value 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and these are the indices. So if we have, for example, 1, and we access the house hand with index 1, that's going to give us the element at index 1. So that's going to give us the corresponding card here. And here again, we also want to add the end separator. So end is going to be equal to, and then just a space, just like that. So that we get this nice formatting so that we print out an X first, and then we print spaces and spaces until we reach the final card, after which we print out a new line. So that we're just going to make sure that everything is on the new line, on the same line, and then afterwards we go to a new line. So that's just what we're kind of doing here in this print house function. So what we can do, for example, is instead of printing the house, we can call print house on the house. And so that's actually going to give us all this printing already. And here we can again replace print with print house. So let's see that in action now. So now we see our house has something and a queen. And we also didn't print the scores, so we don't know what this is. And we have a jack and a 9. And so we have 19. And do we want to draw another card? Well, probably not. So we've got a pretty good hand. Well, we don't know what happened, so maybe afterwards we should actually print the full hand of the house. So here we actually want all the information because now the house kind of turns over what they have. So the house has something and a 5. We've got a 13. Maybe it'd be smart to take another card. Yeah. Well, we've got 20 now, so no, let's not take another card. And now we see the house has 10. And now, obviously, they would also be taking new cards and stuff. But we'll get to that in the next video. So the next video is going to focus on the house kind of continuing to take cards. And then we're going to compare the scores, and we're going to see if you win or if you don't win. And we're also going to include betting. Yeah, but so now we've seen kind of the player side taking the input. We've seen this card deck.pop function, which lets us take off the last value in the list, which is extremely useful. So this is a way that we can kind of simulate picking out cards from a deck, and since we're removing them immediately too. And we've also created this nice little function that lets us print out the house's hand without revealing the first card, which is a bit more like the actual game. Like I said, what we could have done, for example, is we could have made a house class first, and then we could have made the player a subclass of the house and just given it the extra functions of bet, money, and win. But that would have been a little bit more complicated, and it would have not been that nice to follow. It would have just been nicer. It's just kind of nice that we have this one full class that provides us with the disadvantage that if we print the house, for example, we print everything like we have here. So that's why we had to kind of create this little print house function that kind of lets us go around that and print the values of the house with this hidden card at first, so that we don't really fully know what the house has.